Yesterday, your vice president is presenting some presentations and give us some hints and notes. And we are proud and honored to have you every year. While for me and Professor Mike, we have strategic partnership, and he is my PhD advisor since more than 22 years. Then more than welcome, and your president so interesting from our event. Thanks God.
Thank you for having me again, Hanadi.
Yes.
It feels like a family now.
I like your way. You always positive. You always laughing. You always take it easy. And this is best for the life, not to be more stressed and depressed.
We don't need that, Hanadi. Definitely we don't need. And after Trent's last statements, it's hard to go down, right? It's like we have to keep it up there. I don't know. We will try. Trent, you had amazing, very passionate and uplifting ending to the session, to your session. It was very good to hear all those things that you mentioned. I just wanted to add that. So I'm not the only one that gives that, the high level of energy. I'm seeing others.
Trent have a special personality. Trent, I like it. Trent is also, he have a special personality, giving power and giving ambitions for all the listeners. When you're listening to the Trent, really, I'm so interesting to be part of my event. Thank you so much, Trent. Thank you.
But let me tell you this, Hanad. All these are stemming from you. You're an amazing leader. Okay, everything starts from you, how you're organizing, how you're putting together this conference every year. I'm really doing what Trent is doing over there right now.
Thank you so much.
You're doing an amazing job, considering from all over the world, hundreds of individuals are attending, and you are organizing in a way that you're making it seem easy. Because everything is organized so well, but I know it's not easy at all. It cannot be, but you're doing an amazing job. Thank you so much.
Great thanks, Professor Naz, for your kind words. I appreciate it from you. Thank you so much also, Trent. Be with us. You can invite your speaker. I think your speaker in the room.
It is okay. Professor Rafael Popper, are you here? Are we able to see Professor Popper? I think joining from UK, is that right? Maybe not. What about Amin, Professor Amin Al-Habaibey?
Perfect, thanks.
I'm trying. I apologize.
No, it's perfect. My wife keeps her maiden name because it's very difficult to pronounce my family name.
May I say Amin? Is that okay?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. You can call me Naz. So I think we will start with you. Rafael may join later on, but if you don't mind starting the floor is yours. If you have your slides, I'm not sure if Hanadi is going to share your slides or you yourself.
I think I'll share them.
Okay, you have 15 minutes. And after we are done with every presentation, we will get questions. We will have great discussion, I'm sure, in this session.
Hello, everyone. I managed to join.
All right.
Okay. Rafael, would you mind? We are already set to go with Amin. Is that okay with you?
It's perfect. 15 or 25. I was informed last minute that we...
Yes. Unfortunately, Professor Layla Al-Harbi, she will be part of us, having their daughters having accident, and she is in hospital. She informed me from early morning. Then I informed Professor Amin and Professor Rafael to taking 25 minutes, but the last 10 minutes is open discussion. Go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, Hanadi. How many minutes each?
25 because
25. Perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
One,
okay.
Okay. We will
So
use
then,
one presenter.
would you?
The total is 2.
Okay. Would
The
you?
total is 2.
2. Yes.
Go ahead, Professor Amin.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you. I'll try to share the screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depends where you are. I will talk today about building the bridge, fostering a thriving ecosystem, and I'll talk about how we bridging the academia and industry to drive AI integration via thorough collaborative innovation. My name is Amin Al-Hababi. I'm professor of Intelligent Engineering Systems at Nottingham Trent University. I'm also the director of Product Innovation Center. Please call me Amin. And I'll start with the introduction about our research center, the Product Innovation Center. And our Product Innovation Center is a multidisciplinary center that involves multidisciplinary industrial applications and solution sort of provider to the industry, from renewable energy to medical product design, sustainability from the technology side and from the human aspect side. So if we look at our Product Innovation Center, please feel free to scan this QR code. It will take you to our Product Innovation Center. The Product Innovation Center includes different disciplines, from condition monitoring, enabling technologies, medical applications, people-centered design, sustainability, and within that there are different sort of enabling technologies and applications that we focus on. And the reason we focus on these aspects is because this is what our partners, what the industry needs, so that we can build on that collaboration to support SMEs, startup companies, and support the innovation towards a sustainable future from business point of view and from sort of energy and carbon point of view. So I'll just give you some examples of projects we've been doing, and again there are QR codes if you wish to read more information about the projects. So one of the recent projects we published in Applied Energy is about the use of AI for net zero research. And one of the applications we wanted to do is, again, when from that we developed a lot of technology that we could support SMEs, startups, and also support the community. One of the technologies we have developed is to look at vision systems, GPS systems, and air monitoring or quality of air monitoring systems, and integrating the data to create a density map of pollution levels within the time, geographical location. And we also looked at the behavior of e-scooter users, which is a technology is now very common with throughout the whole world and in different cities. And we have identified some technical issues and some human issues that maybe put some of the road users at risk. So we have identified that, and we have developed a technology that now it's in need. So we support other sort of companies now to look at the density mapping of different data, whether it's from vision systems or from the air pollution monitoring. And there is a QR code for that paper if you wish to read further about that one. Also, we work closely with the companies in relation to assessing performance of retrofitting of buildings. Now, this is a technical point, but it's very important maybe for people to be aware that buildings, if if there's an old building and we want to make it more efficient in terms of energy, we would insulate that building. But the problem becomes how to assess the expected performance of building. Now, normally, traditionally what people do, they will monitor a house, they put sensors and keep it running for very lengthy periods of time to be able to assess the performance of the building. We have developed novel approaches that now we are working with our industrial partners on, which is basically to use the artificial intelligence with very short period of monitoring to be able to predict the performance of the building over years to come. There is a QR code for one of the papers as well if you wish to scan that and to read further about those aspects. Other work ongoing at the moment is looking at intelligent rainwater harvesting system using AI with our partners Storm Saver. So we are developing collaboration on the next generation of rainwater harvesting to look at how we could provide an intelligent system to enhance the sustainability of the system and how to increase or enhance the performance of the system from users' point of view, and also to save more water. So there is a QR code for the company Storm Saver. We are working with them closely on 2 projects at the moment funded by Innovate UK. And also we also run certain projects with them to support the innovation and sustainability within the technology we are working on. The project I would like to focus on for the next of this presentation is it's more than £1 million project funded by Innovate UK with a scheme called Bridge AI with Morgan Sindall, one of the construction companies, global construction companies, and Constructsys, which is an SME software company. It's a collaboration between 3 institutions or organizations to look at how we could accelerate the use of AI to assess the construction industry carbon footprint. And again, there is a QR code if you wish to have further information about the project. And the focus here will be about this specific project because we are helping well-established companies, we are helping SMEs, and we are developing AI technology that could be integrated to support the industry and develop an ecosystem that actually sort of support innovation. So the use of artificial intelligence to evaluate the materials carbon footprint of buildings is the subject of this project. And it's very interesting, and we'll go through some of the details on that as a case study. So the motivation is net zero. Now we know that buildings are responsible for 30 to 40% of worldwide carbon emissions, and because of that, it's very important to address this problem from the major contributors of carbon, buildings in this case. So this is where the project is focusing on. If we look at buildings, excuse me, if you look at buildings, you'll find there are some buildings very similar in their design and some are different. And the idea is how can we, from one experience of a house or a group of houses or projects, we could be able to predict using AI the carbon footprint or the embedded carbon within buildings and the operational carbon during the life of the building, that building. And this is what was the focus of this project. We would like to build from experience the data so that AI could basically predict to new customers very easily very easily could predict the carbon footprint. So these are examples of buildings within the Nottingham Trent University area. This is a city campus or part of the city campus. You can see some different buildings, different shapes, different sizes, and the key question is how we can build that experience, given that buildings have got different natures. And when we looked at this aspect to support construction companies to be able to sort of develop the AI technology, we looked at buildings. And what we found is that buildings have got features. And if we can identify the features of buildings that we are building, and in many, or people building in many countries, we should be able to identify that complex relationship between the building features and the the cost, the materials used, and the carbon footprint. And therefore, if there is a new building being built, from that experience of many case studies of buildings, we could actually predict what's happening. And this basically will be very important to develop a software or to enhance the software that already exists called Carbonica, that calculates the carbon but needs sort of more manual input of data to a more automated system. So the aim of and the objectives of this project is to reduce embodied carbon by exploring and proposing the use of artificial intelligence with the assessment tool named Carbonica, which is a software already exists, to enhance to basically and address whole life carbon assessment within the construction industry. So we want to add AI to Carbonica software. So Carbonica software is a whole life carbon reduction tool. It is robust, highly credible, and easy to use. So the software already exists, but one of the limitations is that that could be addressed and enhanced further is that we would like to automate the data entry, would like to automate the prediction of quantities with limited amount of information, and that will help the industry, will help customers who are building in new houses, etc. So that becomes one of the key areas that we want to address. Now, let's look at understanding the whole life carbon in buildings, because our partners or our industrial partners could be within that cycle of activities. There is the product stage where you have products that have been manufactured to be assembled, as it were, in buildings. Then there is the construction stage, which is the most common, maybe aspects of construction industry, where you have cranes and you have sort of vehicles and bringing materials, and you have workers building the building. And once the building is finished, you have the user stage or use stage of the building, where basically you consume water, electricity, gas, and basically the building becomes operation and you need maintenance. And at the end, you have end of life stage, where basically at the end, basically you could decommission the building, maybe recycle materials and address any sort of waste material. And then basically that cycle, hopefully some of the materials will be reused in new projects. And this is all is covered by Carbonica. So what Carbonica does, for example, and this is a simplified sort of case study, you have basically components of a building, and you have carbon per unit of each component. If we could predict basically the quantities of these components, we should be able to look at the embodied carbon. And from the design features of the building, we should be able to look at the operational carbon. And from there, we should be able to sort of predict the whole life cycle. And again, this is all about developing that ecosystem to support the industry within the sort of the construction industry to develop sort of more sustainable, low carbon, low cost applications. Now, we looked at the features of the buildings that the AI could deal with to predict other aspects, quantity, cost, carbon, etc. So we looked at the building height, for example, building shape, size, material cost, some shape coefficients, for example, number of stories, frame type, windows type, etc. So these are general features. And once we know these features within a building, the AI, the theory is, the AI should be able to predict all other aspects of the building. And actually, we managed successfully to achieve that. So develop an AI model, which we are developing an algorithm as well, collaborating with our industrial partners to feed these algorithms. So the idea is, if we have the building elements and the materials used, we should be able to define parameters, and from there, basically, autofill that the data needed to create a predictive model to basically predict the quantities of materials, the energy that will be used, the carbon, embedded carbon, and basically we should be able also to feed that in the software and then do optimization as well. And that means we should be able to predict the cost of the project before it starts, and also to be able to optimize it by selecting different materials that is more environmental friendly or reduce the cost or the time of the project. So that's one of the key issues. So let's look at this case study using AI for building cost estimation. And this is an interesting way where basically the way AI works in this case and will benefit our industrial partners to say, give me the features of the building you want to build, and I will tell you the cost of that building, without actually having an architect to build the building based on the features that it's expected from them. And the way we do that is basically by utilizing Building Cost Information Service Database, BCIS. And basically we had 1,007 samples of previous projects that they fed to the AI system to learn, and they were ranged between 1973 and 2020. And of course, inflation was adjusted based on those sort of dates, so that we have an important comparison that we can achieve, a reasonable comparison to achieve. So we looked at, for example, the features that we would like to look at, and what we found is the building number. Building number was in the database. Of course, it's a unique number for the project. You have the location, the city where the building is, gross floor area, the year of the building, etc. So we've got different general characteristics of the building, and from there, the AI system should be able to estimate the cost of the building. Now, again, that will create an interesting application for our industrial partners. And we looked at, without going into too much details, basically we've done data analysis to look at the correlation between different variables and in relation to the selection and the cost. And for example, we found the area is related to cost, very closely related to cost, which is expected. And not only we've done that, we actually looked at what key features from the list of features that we could use to accurately predict the cost of the building. And what we found is that the location, gross floor area, year of the building, purpose of the building, number of stories, foundation type, and frame type are the main aspects that will estimate the cost in that case very accurately in that case. So we, of course, I don't want to go to too much details, but please, if you want to sort of know more about our project, please feel free to contact me, and I will share my contacts at the end of this presentation. So we've done a coding process so that the AI system could be used to learn from experience and predict the future, as it were. So all the keys, all the non-numeric values, we're giving a coding of numeric values so that the neural network, it could be used to train the data. And at the end of that training process, those numbers will go back to their text format, where basically a human being could understand what's happening there. And again, we've used artificial intelligence neural network model. And again, if you want to know more about the details of the technology, I'll be happy to share that. I mean, it's there on the slide, but I'm aware that maybe not everyone within the audience is interested to the mathematical side of what we are doing, but I just want to keep the sort of the general aspects that we do in relation to supporting the industry and the technology we have used. So that's the structure of the neural network. We have the inputs, which are the features of the building, and through the artificial intelligence system, we end up with the estimation of cost for a project that's never seen by the neural network. And that becomes very, very important tool. So instead of spending weeks trying to calculate the costs, for example, in a classic situation or classic scenario, we have seconds to be able to predict the cost from features. And actually, neural network was very successful in predicting what will be the behavior and the cost, etc., of the project by comparing between the expected and what we predicted through the neural network. Of course, the way we do that is because we already have got all the data, 1007 projects. We hide some from the neural network. We don't tell the neural network about, and then we train the neural network, and then we give it some of the projects that I've never seen before, and we see if it can predict that within the expected figures, and that was a very successful system. So we had error with the region within 1.12 or 1.14%, with time of learning of the neural network between 77 seconds and 37 seconds. These were the top sort of two algorithms that behaved very well for our project. So now our industrial partners applying those algorithms to a software, to Carbonica, to make it more automated, and that will simply reduce the time, the cost, and create sort of a very efficient and productive industry. Again, this is just an example of how we work with industry to create that ecosystem of collaboration so that we can reduce cost and enhance efficiency. And also, perhaps our industrial partners could get a bigger segment of the market. So in conclusion, NTU works closely with businesses and industry to support innovation. Several examples have been highlighted. The recent project, Innovate UK funded project with about 1.4 million. We are developing AI algorithms so that we can support the construction industry to estimate the carbon footprint, the cost, and the quantities of materials, so that the process could be optimized from early stage of the project. So that's my last slide. Thank you very much indeed. This is a QR code of my LinkedIn account. Please feel free to scan it with your mobile phone and send me an invitation, and we'll be happy to connect with you and discuss further collaboration. Thank you very much indeed.
Amin, thank you so much. I love these QR codes. I am right now going to LinkedIn. That's very good. Of course, it's a natural fit because this is your area, right? You're absolutely great at what you're doing, obviously, with your presentation. We just witnessed that. Thank you for sharing your work with all of us. We will get questions later after the next presentation, if you don't mind staying here with us. But great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks.
Okay. Raphael, we are ready for you.
Yes, can you give me rights to share the screen?
Sure, thank you.
Okay. Can you see?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Okay. So let me see if I'm sharing. Yeah, can you see my screen, my slides?
Yes, Raphael.
Okay, great. So yes, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the globe. This presentation is about a fascinating topic, which is building the bridge and fostering a thriving startup ecosystem. And just like the previous presenter, I will just briefly introduce myself. I have been building bridges across several types of organizations and ecosystems, starting a little bit about my journey in the early 2000s in United Nations, building bridges for Latin America and the Caribbean and Central Europe in UNIDO, then in academia, where I'm still linked to Manchester and Manchester Institute of Innovation Research in the university, where I did my PhD on foresight, and also started building bridges in several innovation ecosystems, where I also joined the entrepreneurship ecosystem with our own company, Futures Diamond, as innovation director and now as director of strategy, and working in Nordic countries, in Finland, also in Russia for a while. I'm still based in Finland in academia, And in more recent years, I've been working in Central Europe, especially in Poland, where I have created centers for foresight and internationalizations at Technology Partners Foundation, different type of frameworks that I will be talking about, like knowledge transfer, establish companies, Green Iceberg Ltd in Poland, and continue affiliations with various universities across the globe, in Uruguay, in Sao Paulo, and now I am in Barcelona. It's missing from the slide, but this is a little bit about myself, building bridges around different world regions and across the Triple Helix. The Triple Helix Association is building bridges between industry, academia, and government. So this presentation, it's about fostering a thriving startup ecosystem using a holistic foresight-driven approach to ecosystem assessment. And building such robust innovation ecosystem requires both a holistic approach, looking into multiple perspectives and agendas, as well as looking into the future with the help of foresight. And this requires analysis of what we call factors of success or essentials for thriving, clustered around several categories of perspective. The technological one that drives different type of solutions, cutting edge infrastructure, and different type of innovation-friendly policy through technology and technological development. The economic perspective is fundamental for resilience and to create sustainable business models. The funding for such innovations for the ecosystems to thrive requires venture capitalists and many other multiple sources of funding. Nowadays, in many world regions, especially in Europe, that is leading some of the most advanced and ambitious agendas, the so-called Green Deal environmental perspective is important to develop green infrastructure, eco-conscious policies, and the political perspective allows us to look into what sort of regulations and public-private partnerships can drive growth. When looking at responsible research and innovation, the ethical perspective ensures transparency, social responsibility, and different type of mentorship programs that I will be referring to, as mentorship is one important pillar of successful innovation ecosystem. And then space from the perspective of urban and rural dynamics, balancing the growth through creating this bridge of complementarities and synergies between urban and rural spaces, and understanding and reducing those gaps and divides are important both in funding and in infrastructures. And then social perspective to foster inclusion, community building, networking are important. In this presentation, I will be sharing the results of a comprehensive, as I mentioned, holistic analysis of over 1,700 success factors mapped from nearly 600 sustainable innovations, mainly in Europe, but also considering innovations from around the world. It's a large database, and 5 pillars of innovation ecosystems are used to take into account how these 7 types of success factors can influence the 5 pillars of innovation ecosystems, namely funding, mentorship, infrastructure, regulations, and networks. Hopefully to help us identify some insights, which I will be sharing with you, some of them very soon. Overall, the whole methodology relies on a systematic 5-step. First, we identify through a European Commission-funded project more than 500 sustainable innovations. The project was completed some 4 or 5 years ago, I believe, but we built it in a self-sustainable way. So many master's programs to which I am attached and others I have been supporting through guest lectures have continued supporting the platform. So the database has grown to more than 600 case studies, nearly 700, but for this presentation, we have analyzed 598, so almost 600 case studies. And from this, we took into account 200 that are really relevant for the topic of a startup ecosystem mapping from the perspective of success factors analysis. So From these case studies, we identified 1,732, if I remember well, so over 1,700 technological, economic, environmental, political, societal, ethical, and spatial related factors of success that we mapped around these 7 categories, and we identified the top 10 lessons for each of them. Because of time, we will not look into all the top 10 lessons, but these have been analyzed in detail. There is a free tutorial or online course if you're interested looking into this. At the end of the presentation, we have question time, so I'm happy to answer questions. We have built a robust framework for action road mapping, and we have written a first volume of a Springer book, which I can also refer, is in the recommended literature. But for this presentation, we have further analyzed the critical factors of success, and we identify some 35 key insights, of which I will be highlighting a few. From the overall results of the project, as I mentioned, several roadmaps were created and a Springer book was produced. Now, back into the core of this presentation, I mentioned there are 7 different types of perspective or insights we are learning from, and here I would like to share around each of the 5 pillars of innovation ecosystem some important highlights. Due to time, I will highlight only one for each of these perspectives. So advances in technological investments and access to research and innovation are fundamental in the funding dimension for technologies. For example, in areas like biotech advancements and biofuel and nano coating technologies, access to funding is fundamental. Mentorship programs in tech literacy and sustainability practices, another important factor of success for the startup ecosystem. In terms of infrastructure, everything related to smart city and IoT, Internet of Things networks, mobility-related innovations and sensors and ICT infrastructure are important for an innovation ecosystem to thrive. Several regulatory sandboxes and testing grounds for eco-innovations, especially AI-driven solutions for air quality monitoring, for biofuel production, for example, and many other areas are supporting ecosystems to thrive. And last but not least, tech-based knowledge sharing, different type of platforms and networks to empower collaborative problem solving and in digital communities. Now, from an economic perspective, there are some important insights from the analysis we did that we need to look at. So here again, green finance, sustainable finance initiatives are, especially in Europe, with the Green Deal program in Horizon Europe and many other initiatives are supporting low carbon startups. Economic management skills, so more and more startups are receiving this type of cost-saving mentorships. Actually, the newly elected US government are getting from the richest man in the world, from Elon Musk, this type of efficiency Dodge department that is also prioritizing cost and efficiency. Infrastructure, circular economy, innovations, investments in recycling, life cycle management to lower cost is also a priority. And tax incentives in terms of regulations are really boosting ecosystems and encouraging different type of eco-friendly startups to flourish. And some examples we have from French tax credits for sustainable purchases are in our database. And then in terms of networks, once again, collaborative business ecosystems, not only for problem understanding, but in order to share different type of resources and knowledge to help local farmers directly selling their products in different type of markets, increasing their markets. Obviously, the environmental perspective is very important to create sustainable bridges. It's actually a must in every European project that we are involved. So grants for eco-innovation is becoming a critical factor in Europe and other world regions, I believe so. So projects converting plastic waste into energy are some examples, and different ways of reducing pollution and conserving limited resources that we might have in water scarce regions. Advisory and mentorship programs on green business models. So mentorship on short supply chains for organic food producers to reduce transport emissions. In terms of infrastructure, green tech innovation comes again, especially in urban development. For transport infrastructure, there are many initiatives that are emulating bike sharing and public transport systems in various European countries that are encouraging the reuse of individual automobiles, and regulations to protect and conserve our natural resources, our water systems, and national conservation targets very much aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals. It's showing as part of the environmental insights, and green startup collaboration. So collaboration networks are important, but particularly focused on green and eco-focused startups. And for example, in the recently completed last days, I was in Malta in the Global Innovation Forum organized by the International Telecommunications Union, and one of the winning startups was developing an eco-label that, with the help of different type of digital twins, was completely mapping the whole DNA of the whole production and supply chain and the products and the materials used. So green startups are actually winning in many of these contexts, and they are becoming very hot for venture capitalists. In the political dimension, this is an important bridge because it's very linked to regulation and to different type of public, private, and joint funding for green finance initiative, especially in Horizon Europe and the next framework program. That will be the case in Europe, and mentorship programs to help industry with specific advice, mentors with political regulation, with sector-specific standards to understand what are the key regulations in sustainable energy mentorship, and then infrastructure regarding data privacy and security standards, GDPR compliance, safeguarding consumer information, and international policy support. Border trade, cross-border trade, reducing different type of compliance costs to support EU-wide policies. Once again, in Europe, this is an important topic. No surprise, as most of the cases are European. Some of you might be connecting from the US, from Africa, or from other world regions, from the Middle East, but this is a hot topic and very relevant green type of initiative and policies in the so-called European Union Green Deal to support startups aligned with international sustainability goals. Social insights and connecting with different segments of society is important, especially underrepresented funders, social enterprise funds, minority funders, creating equitable startup growth, and culturally sensitive mentorship programs. With founders, with multicultural insights, especially now with increasing migration from multiple reasons, because of conflicts around the world, because of climate migration and aging as well. Planned and unplanned migration requires culturally sensitive mentorship programs. And for that, infrastructure for equitable public space for networking, co-working hubs for people with disabilities are also becoming important insights and factors of success of thriving startup ecosystems. And of course, with the migration elements, visa policies, supportive immigration, and that's a hot issue all over the world, right? So this was one of the big issues of the political campaigns in the US, migration and border immigration policies, and how to enable international funders to contribute their skills, their cultural richness, And last but not least, community-led education initiatives, supporting through workshops on ethical sourcing and sustainable entrepreneurship. Ethical dimensions, especially with the growing importance of responsible innovation, is a must, is paramount. So funding channels emphasizing startups that comply and promote social and ethical standards, social impact funding, transparent funding, and mentorship programs to support this transparency and trust building. So mentors that provide support to consumers and different type of stakeholders. Different type of infrastructure related initiatives for ethical product development, avoiding that algorithms include biases, and how to take into account the use of AI in areas or regions of the world where data is not taken into account, the local data, but is built on and has biases from developed countries rather than developing country data. Anti-discrimination policies is a hot issue for thriving ecosystems, innovation ecosystems, including in hiring policies and avoiding discrimination. And last is accountability and collaboration, ethical networks and structures. And in the last dimension, which is spatial, and here we're talking about building bridges between urban and rural spaces. It's all about funding programs and tax incentives, encouraging these both urban and rural startups, supporting balanced regional development and national development and supranational development with localized mentorships that gather specifically and focus on unique opportunities and challenges of startups in rural areas, as well as some in urban areas. Sustainable transport link between those regions to create sustainable synergies and facilitating collaboration and workforce mobility. Many as well living in rural areas, but working in urban areas thanks to digital transformation solutions. Regional zoning for innovations. And the last insight has to do with local resource sharing platforms and platforms that enable startups to share resources, co-working spaces, and so on. With all these insights in mind, I only highlighted a couple within each of these categories, but you can imagine with over 1,700, it's an overwhelming amount of data on success factors for innovation ecosystems. My final remarks to share today before the opening for questions is that there are some important key elements to achieve success vision for building a strong bridge for a thriving ecosystem. So to bridge the gaps and to cultivate such thriving ecosystem, it's important to develop a policy and ecosystem resilience approach. So to establish policies and frameworks that enable such innovation ecosystem to adapt, to grow, and to endure, to sustain different type of challenges coming from the environment, climate related, like the recent floods that we had some days ago not far from here in Barcelona, in Valencia. And there are still some warnings across Spain because of the weather conditions, social and economic shifts. So we need to develop policies that promote resilience and ecosystems that are resilient. The second is promoting empathy in innovation, to have human-centered approaches that value social enterprises, social and environmental impacts that help us.
1 minute,
yes.
if you, because we need time for discussion. Thank you.
Yeah. This is my last slide, as I said. Thank you. So promoting empathy is important. Conducting wildcards and weak signals analysis so that you build truly resilient policies and ecosystem, and fostering knowledge transfer through knowledge valorization, co-creation, and sharing. And last but not least, empowering everything with strategic foresight and decision-making, anticipating, recommending, and transforming future. So by embedding all these principles, these 5 recommendations, I believe that it is possible to foster a thriving startup ecosystem. here are some further readings, and thank you very much for your time. So less than 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you, Rafael. Thank you, both of you, Professors Amin and Rafael. Great two presentations we had for this session. Now I'm opening the floor for discussions, any questions anyone may have. Anybody would like to raise any questions? I have some questions. If you you will need to unmute yourself if you have any questions. I'm not seeing any raised hands. Okay, everybody's being quiet. Amin, I have a question, if you don't mind answering this. I know you mentioned Carbonica. First of all, great innovative ideas there. Carbonica, intelligent carbon calculation tool you mentioned.
Yes.
And it helps with that driving down the environmental impact of all the assets, right? That's the aim. But my question will be related to the data that will be inputted into it, because the result will be based on the data that is. I wonder how that data is gathered, because if it is not reliable, the result won't be at the end of the day. Could you please explain a little bit us that how that's gathered and how the input is happening a little bit?
Thank you. This is very, I think, an interesting question. Thanks for sort of asking about the data. The data comes from two sources. One is the database of previous national 1007 projects. So all the data actually are real data from previous projects that were, projects were initiated, built, and operated. So we know all the actual information about buildings from that database, and we know the cost of the projects from that database, which is the construction industry keeps and maintain, so that as records of what happened in the previous projects. Now, Morgan Stanley as a company as well has got its own data from its previous projects. So we take their data, or they provide their data to us, so that we can actually learn from experience to be able to predict the carbon, the cost, and the quantity of materials for new projects. For example, if assuming they have done 50 schools in the past, built 50 buildings for school purposes. Now, if there is a customer comes with the new school and they say, well, I want a 3-story school for 200 students, and etc., in terms of the characteristic of the building, there will be 50 examples of projects that has got some overlap of features between the new project and the previous projects, and therefore we should be able to predict materials, carbon, cost, etc., from previous projects. Now, the argument could be, what if it's very, very unique project in its own right? But normal construction industry, they are very conservative in nature, in a way that most customers would like to build a house that similar to, maybe in some features at least, houses that built in the previous decades, because they know they are reliable, they know they are stable, etc., etc. So most of the features like foundation, frames, number of stories, etc., they will be very similar to previous projects, and therefore we should be able to predict with high accuracy what would be the expected cost or carbon or time needed to build such project.
It sounds like it is time consuming, right? It is. It takes a lot of time from the data collection, which is there already, but still the putting in there and getting the result. It sounds like, is there a time frame? Or no? But my questions might not be that accurate because it's not an area I'm so much familiar with.
The data we get from the database or companies, we can in days sort of arrange it in a way to be fit to the neural network. And we've seen that we could teach the neural network in seconds about the data. And then with the press of a button, we can predict any new building based on the features. So there isn't much penalty in terms of time in terms of arranging the data for the training process. However, there will be significant savings when we have a project that the customer brings to the table and say, I want that specific generic characteristic of a building, and therefore we can press a button literally after we add maybe 9 features or 10 features of the building, press a button, and suddenly all the output will be there for them. And then they will look at the results, and then they will see if they can afford it, if the time is suitable, if the carbon is suitable for their objectives. If not, we can think about different materials as well, and we will look at different sort of strategy to redesign the building with the less story or less area or different materials so that they can achieve what they want within the constraints of the objectives they have.
Thank you, Amit. How much of it, what is the percentage you think that it is being implemented? Because there are cost implications, obviously. It sounds like you may have some suggestions to reduce this or do this or use this material. It's better in terms of the environmental impact, reducing it. But do you think many of these individuals would be inclined towards implementing it? Although it might be costly.
I think there is different objectives most customers or companies would like to achieve. Some is reducing the cost, some reducing the time of the project, and some reducing the carbon or the whole life carbon of the building because they have carbon targets they want to meet. So there are constraints. Depending on the customer and what they want, we should be able to automatically calculate these figures automatically through AI, and also AI will help to optimize. So if they want, let's say, a cheaper building, then we can look at the materials to say there is a material that will provide a lower cost, but it's high in carbon. So it depends what the customers want in a way. If they want to reduce the carbon, then there is a material there which has got lower carbon emission, but there will be issues maybe related to time of delivery because the logistics of providing that material would come perhaps from another country, and would take time, etc., etc. So there are, and maybe the construction industry might not have experience in dealing with such material. They need training. So there are many variables that we need to address. But already the construction industry will deal with that on a daily basis. But there are some of these numbers and figures and the let's say the profile of the discussion happens with data that is done or driven manually in terms of the feeding the data to a software or manually to Excel sheets or to other sort of databases. What we are doing is with the press of a button, we should be able to get those numbers. So that will help in the decision making from early days of the project.
Thank you, Ahmed. We have a couple of more minutes. Anyone has any questions? I have a question for Rafael. We have just a couple of more minutes, Rafael. You mentioned funding, Building Bridge is the aspects of it, funding, mentorship, infrastructure, regulations, and networks. I think infrastructure and funding, they go hand in hand, right? So when we are talking about infrastructure, could you please tell us a little bit about developing versus developed nations, because the differences are there when we are talking about infrastructure. What are the implications and what that impacts? Like what aspects of your work that is being impacted?
Yes.
I know it's a really big question to answer in a couple of minutes. I am so sorry.
No, thank you very much. In fact, some people might want to put infrastructure together with funding. I put normally funding separate for several reasons, because funding can enable both infrastructure and technology development and different type of initiatives to bring together communities and networks and to help as well capacity building and mentorship. So I prefer not to mix the two. What I would agree is that perhaps infrastructure can be put together with technology and investments in rural broadband and different type of technologies to empower rural areas, as well as in urban areas on technology hubs. It's one example. For example, when looking into sustainable transport networks, how to enhance connectivity and accessibility is one area which I would add. So green infrastructure initiatives such as, for example, renewable energy programs help to reduce environmental impacts both in urban and rural areas. So these efforts can help both type of spatial dimensions that we were discussing, the urban, to support thriving ecosystems. When it comes to funding, I think the balanced approach encourages investment in underfunded areas. Okay, and then in some countries, in some developed countries, you will be surprised how well connected rural areas are. I don't know where you're based yourself, but rural areas.
I'm in New Jersey.
In New Jersey. Oh, okay. So you're in the U.S. So that might be the case there. So some people prefer sometimes to move from the urban areas to move to more rural, because actually the infrastructure, digital and broadband and connectivity is well enough, especially after COVID. We all have learned that it is possible to survive without physical meetings. In fact, this conference is fully online, right? But a couple of weeks ago, I was in Nigeria, where critical infrastructure deficiencies were unfortunately eye-watering. In some of the places where I was in the conference center itself, there was no Wi-Fi. So I had to tell my students in Warsaw and other Białystok in Poland that my lecture would be canceled. However, just a couple of hours ago, I managed to give a lecture to some students in Warsaw from Barcelona, and it was seamless, right? So we can have different type of infrastructure related issues, regardless of whether we're talking about urban and rural, as far as we have the right technology in place. I would probably comment, you didn't ask, but there have been a lot of hype and over promising of AI in many areas, especially the previous, my co-presenter here. And I'm actually very pro AI in many aspects, but we need to be cautious when using AI also for different areas and type of sustainability. Mental health and AI can perhaps challenge the use of human creativity, empathy, and also visions about the future should be created by us. So I think we need to have the right balance in the use of AI when looking at innovation ecosystems. They might lack some of these tools and algorithms. I know that there was a discussion with the press of a button. You get the magic solution, but the magic solution is based on data, and the question is, where is this data coming from? Is there transparency about the data that is being used, the algorithm? And we might inadvertently be making decisions and building visions and policies based on heavy biases, which undermine fairness and sustainability of different type of communities, right? So I think over-reliance on automated decision-making might erode in the long term the collaborative spirit and nature of sustainable transformations, because it's not with the press of one button that you build a sustainable relationship with people, right? So just 2 days ago, I celebrated 18th wedding anniversary with my wife, and that's a sustainable social example of social relationship. We have built a family with 4 children, and it was not the press of a button. There are a lot of ups and downs. There are a lot of lessons learned. There are a lot of bumps, a lot of hypes, and there is a lot of communication and negotiation in terms of compromises and understanding each other's needs. And by pressing one button, we will not be able to communicate with all these communities, not just the urban and rural divides, but those who are disconnected from the data centers that are being used by the algorithms.
Sure. Yes, thank you, Rafael. Thank you. Very good points. I wish we had more time, but it's a little past 11 here. I know it's different times all around, but I think we are still on time, a little bit delay.